Dun, dun, dun. Hello, welcome to Adaptation. I am Kelsey Wilkins, and I'm here with my good friend
Eric Swader.
Awesome Sauce.
Yeah.
We're gonna just roll right into today's episode about a book that was turned into a movie a few years ago, and that book is A Fault in Our Stars by John Green. Little spoiler alert: if you've not read or watched the movie, you probably shouldn't be with us.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to be with us, so
Yeah.
go do that and then come back. Or if you don't mind spoilers, stay along for the ride.
Sure.
Right? That
Sure.
works. We are here and we're going to talk about, in general, quality of story adaptation, some smidgen of details, and the like of that kind of stuff. And we'll have a blog post that goes into more detail about the one-to-ones for these two forms of media. But for now, we should probably start with a log line. Let's give me a log line, Swader, for this one.
Find something that really condenses all the thematic elements. Young lovers face their destiny. Best impression.
My log line would add just a little tidbit to that.
Sure.
Young lovers with terminal illness
Yeah.
face their destiny, which is a major part of this story. Actually, the whole crux of the story is dying.
Yeah.
So a little bit of a caveat, folks. I will cut around it if I can, but if I can't, I will be crying this episode because it is a sad episode, sad story, and I have a little bit of a personal context I might bring into it. So if that is trigger warning to anybody who is dealing with somebody who is having a terminal illness as well, this may not be the episode for you.
Yeah.
If you're not done processing that, or if it's still fresh in your mind, save this episode for later. Come on back. That's a pretty good overview
Yeah.
of the general log line. Characters. Let's go into characters. So
Yeah.
there wasn't a huge amount of characters.
It's pretty tightly focused.
Pretty tightly focused. I thought it was a very clean, tight book. And overall, and we'll go in at the very end of what our general impressions were, I thought a great adaptation.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that the things that were cut were good to cut.
Yeah.
And the things that were pared down in the order at which they were told on screen, well done. But the first character I want to mention is the lead, Hazel Grace Lancaster. She is the narrator of the book. She's also the main character in the movie, along with her co-character that Swader will tell us about. But basically, Hazel Grace Lancaster is 16 to 17, depending on what version you're looking at. And she has thyroid cancer that has migrated to her lungs. So this is a cancer story, folks. And in both adaptations, she does wear oxygen the whole time. It is a big crux of her struggle and the fact that she is facing impending death, even though she does not know when that will occur. Not only is she contemplating how it would affect herself and how she views the world itself from her perspective, but also how the people, like specifically her parents, will feel after she is gone, which I feel like is a big question for a lot of folks who are suffering with that kind of illness, what they're going to leave behind, which is a big question in the story. So if you want to tell us about her co-character, the main man, love interest.
And that will be Augustus Gus Waters, a 17, 18-year-old boy. 17, I think.
17 in the book, 18
Yeah.
in the movie.
I thought that was a discrepancy.
They added a year in the movie, I think, just for palatability.
Yeah.
Because it is a love story, and some people might find a 16-year-old a little harder to intake than a 17-year-old.
Yeah,
I guess.
Absolutely. Harder to relate to.
Yeah.
For a broadest audience. Yeah.
Yeah. So they tacked on 12 months.
Yeah.
I didn't really mind it.
No, I didn't either. I think he gets the point across.
Yeah.
But she meets this very vivacious, excited young man in the support group who we find out survived his own battle with cancer and lost his leg in the process and has a prosthetic leg. And is so outwardly optimistic about the world that it shines through, and it shines through his attention to Hazel. It's a new connection for her and for him, and you can tell that it's at a moment when they're in an incredibly tender place in their lives, and it's shocked with uncertainty, and he's this bright light in the middle of that, in the middle of all her difficulty.
For sure. He definitely came off as a beacon in both versions.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things I thought about their relationship in general was the tone at which the actress who plays Hazel is Shailene Woodley.
Mm-hmm.
I thought she did a decent job.
Yeah.
I think she did a pretty good job with the character.
Yeah.
But reading it on page, I saw more of the puppy love.
Yeah.
The hesitant puppy love, because she didn't want to fall in love with somebody when she was super sick.
Sure.
But more of that, like, love at first sight type of moment.
Yeah.
In the movie, it was kind of portrayed as, like, cunty. I don't know. I don't know. Like, they, like, made cunty. Do you know what I mean? Like,
I do know what you mean. I do know what you mean.
Like, it was just, like, a stare down, and she was just, like,
she
kind
was
of glaring.
It was a standoffishness.
Yeah.
That definitely. There was a standoffishness that definitely deflected a lot. Felt designed to deflect a lot. And from someone who did not want to make herself vulnerable in this group because she didn't see the point. It's funny, in a very strange way, you have this book that was written for a much younger audience, sharing some thematic ground with Fight Club, our last episode, that features heavily people who are suffering and looking for some kind of comfort from this group of people, even if it's not in the intended way. Like, that's the funniest thing about it, is that, in this case, the protagonist makes a healthy human connection in a support group, which could not be more different or psychotic than Fight Club's
Oh my gosh. Yeah, the support clubs in Fight Club are very different than the support clubs in the Heart of Jesus.
100%.
In this story. But I think John Green did a good job of poking fun at the whole institution of support clubs,
Sure.
while also showing support for support clubs.
Sure.
Like, he gave it the option to being an avenue for some people, just not his character.
Yeah.
Like, I could see that even other members, or like the fact that Isaac, another character we'll get into, went to support club consistently, support group, shows that it could be beneficial for some people, but also not for everybody.
Yeah.
Which I think is a good message. Everybody's different. Everybody processes through trauma, illness, dying in very different ways.
Yep.
So I thought John Green did a really good job of showing a bunch of different perspectives with the simplicity of one group.
Yeah.
So there's like the leader of the group who had testicular cancer, Babiglia.
Mike Birbiglia. One of my favorite stand-ups, actually.
Oh my God. He did such a good job when he was like, they're describing his background of like having testicular cancer.
It's so funny.
And I'm like, I should not be laughing at the fact that the guy had cancer, but even in the book she like makes fun of him, and in the movie he portrays it as such like a lovable guy that I'm
just
like
such a doofus.
And you can't like, you can make fun of him, but like only saying your brother is a butthead.
Yeah.
But if a stranger or a bully says your brother's a butthead, fuck that guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Because there's a positivity in his intention that shines through, and it's impossible ultimately to deny him. He means the best he possibly can. Mm-hmm. He is a straight up puppy.
He's a puppy dog. He's a golden retriever at its core.
He's a golden retriever at its core. Mm-hmm. And I think what's interesting is that in between Hazel and Augustus, you have Isaac.
Yes, I would love to go into Isaac's story.
Is an interesting character in and of himself, and has a storyline that kind of informs a lot of interesting discussion. Yeah.
So I'll go a little description of Isaac. Is one of Gus's best friends. It's not really clear of when Augustus and Isaac met. Not in support group, because Isaac brings Gus to support group with him for the first time. Yeah. When we first meet Gus as a character, and when Hazel meets him for the first time as well. Mm-hmm. So we have to assume that they met beforehand. Isaac has eye cancer.
Yeah.
In one of his eyes, he lost it a long time ago. He has one fake eye. And at the beginning, right when we meet him, it is said that he is scheduled to lose his other eye and go completely blind. But that's okay, because he has a really hot girlfriend called Monica that he absolutely loves. And is super cheesy. And they always say, always. And you're like, stop. They're one of those gross PDA couples.
Yeah.
At one point he's squeezing her boob, but you think it's gonna pop. Even in the movie, I thought that was hilarious. The way it's like, is he squeezing is he hurting
Shalane,
her?
I remember specifically Shalane's reaction being very funny to that in the movie. It's why I think Shalane is so good. Really do think she does quite a good job in this role.
She is a hidden gem. Like, people judge her for Secret Life of the American Teenager way too often.
Yeah.
But even she said, like, that was trash. She recognizes it's trash.
Yeah.
But even in, like, I liked her portrayal in Divergent.
Yeah.
Like the book series. That might be another episode of ours.
Yeah, sure.
As a mini-sode. Her and everything else, I really think she does a great job. And she took this character in stride. And obviously not many people have gone through what this character in the book has gone through. But she was very relatable.
Yeah.
As just even like teen angst. Most of us, all of us who are past a certain age, have been teenagers.
Yeah.
At some point.
I think I was.
I think maybe I was.
I might have been.
And looking back, I'm like, yeah, no, I was very similar to that.
Yeah.
So she did a great job.
Yeah.
But anyway, Isaac
Yeah.
also represents something I think most people don't have in that situation, and that is a relatable friend.
Yeah.
They don't really have a lot of people to talk to.
Yeah.
And even I was surprised Gus and Isaac would be friends.
Yeah.
If I saw them in the real world, I'd be like, what?
Well, they're an odd couple. You know,
they're an odd couple.
That's what I liked about them, is that they're... So I guess it's something that I think is fascinating about the kids in the situation, is that because they have to face their mortality on a much shorter timeline, their personalities, I mean, they have to find a wisdom in their time. They have to find something in their time, and they are such like oddball, comic insulty, like everything about their relationship is clearly from a place of self-deprecation, which I think is such a mature place for like two guys who are going through a really awful time to bond over something that a lot of people don't pick up until much later in life.
Oh yeah, the frankness.
Yeah.
The wit.
That's absolutely right.
I think John Green may have given them too much intelligence as characters, because from that standpoint, I'm like, no teenage boy is that witty, sure. John. I wish they were. These are my ideal teenage boy characters that I wish were real.
I was the exception that proved the rule.
Yeah. But I do think that he did a good job with those two, that friendship that he built between the two.
Yeah.
Let's go into maybe more of the themes, and we can bring in other characters back in, and the different characters that were in the book versus in the movie. Going along with the theme of friendship, there's some characters in the book that were not in the movie that I was kind of glad were not in the movie. Yeah. Caitlin, I think her name was.
Her faux socialite.
Yeah, her faux British socialite best friend that was I think he was trying to mirror Isaac for Gus, for Hazel to have a friend. Yeah. But it wasn't entirely necessary. Yeah. So I think that plays more into, the movie did a better job, I think, portraying the relationships of actual sick kids. Yeah. Because a lot of times, and even in Hazel's dialogue and in the movie, when they know that they're going to die, the impending doom, they push people away. Mm-hmm. And they kind of illustrated that with her friend, who they don't really hang out very much. Or when they're hanging out, it's very like one-sided.
And not even a disdainful place.
Not even a disdainful place, but a place of not knowing how to react. Yeah. So I'm going to bring a little bit of a personal scenario into this. Quite frankly, I'm very open about this on social media. If you scroll back at least a month, you'll probably see a post about it on my socials. But my twin sister, she actually passed away from the same cancer that Augustus Waters had in the book. But her experience and Hazel's experience were very similar, I think, more towards the movie than the book. So my sister had some face value friends that lingered, but we also moved states, so it was kind of hard to have friends when you're getting treatment in a completely different state you've grown up. Her sense of loneliness and her sense of isolation in the movie, I think, was better portrayed by Shailene Woodley and by the character itself than two true real life experiences. My sister watched TV all day long. It wasn't reality TV. It was Monk and House and like Charmed, and maybe even some Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Sure. But she would do that all day. She would not really, she kind of pushed my mom away. She pushed me away because she was afraid that we would be too hurt if we got attached when she was gone. She knew she was going to be gone. So she's like, I don't want to make an impression on you even more because I know I'm not going to be here. It's going to hurt even worse for you guys when I'm gone. And I think Hazel is the same exact way. She's worried about her parents over everything. What's going to happen to you when I'm gone? And that's a big question for kids that are sick. They don't know what they're leaving behind. My sister knew my mom would be an absolute fucking wreck. I thought this was probably the most accurate portrayal of child sickness. Besides maybe My Sister's Keeper. Maybe. Mm-hmm. But this one for me is one that I go back to on the anniversary of her passing every single year. I cried like a fucking baby watching and reading this book for my personal experience. But it was a good cry for me. It was a cathartic cry because it was so true to life. Mm-hmm. So John Green, you did a fantastic job coming from somebody who not firsthand experienced it, but was very close to a situation like this. Mm-hmm. So in terms of character reality, kudos. Good job. What would you say, Swader, would be a good, not a good, but one of the major, besides what we leave behind, a different theme?
I mean, I think it's acceptance. I think that it is an individual's ability to accept a perception of themselves. Because I think when you're young, you're supposed to thrive on your ego a little bit more. You're supposed to believe that you'll live forever and that you're invincible. And at that point, usually you feel like you do. But when you suffer from something that forces you to question that, it leaves you in a difficult place. And I think that ties into the idea of a legacy, and a personal legacy is you shouldn't have to consider that at that age. You should not have to consider that as a teenager.
God, no.
It's cruel, but it's a cruelty with no parent. It's there is nothing. There is no way to redress it. There's no revenge. There's nothing that you can hurt you, and so you have to accept this extraordinary burden that most people your age don't have to, and it's about how they each approach it so differently. I think I think it's a really good episode because when a fan of a novel, an earlier medium, is then presented with another version of that medium and they have a personal connection to it, their reaction to it will be as different as the next person's reaction to it. And because I think that exists in no other genre really, because if you go and see a new movie with an unreleased premise and you encounter it for the first time, you develop your own opinion, but there's not some connective tissue between one person's vision and another person's vision that forces us to think about why we like or dislike a thing, mm-hmm. why we aren't drawn to a version of that story. And in that sense, you have Hazel and Augustus both struggling with their own versions of how this affects their story. Mm-hmm. Who are they in the world? Hazel thinks about, she has her, I don't know if I'm using this idea correctly, but her locus of control is outside of her. And the way she thinks about control, she's put it beside her. And she's put herself into the flow of life. Life moves through her. Mm-hmm. And Augustus wants the world to move for him.
Yes.
And that's something that I think a lot of young men struggle with, that I've struggled with, is this idea that we feel this urge to think that we can shift the world. We can move the world based on our intention and our want for ourselves. But you learn in life that is simply not the case, that the world moves through you and it doesn't move for you. And to have to deal with that at this age.
Shouldn't have to.
Unbelievable.
Really shouldn't have to. I feel like Hazel's also really on the surface negative or pessimistic. But then as you get to know her more and more and how she compares and how she her love for Augustus kind of flourishes.
Yeah.
She's trying to be more realistic.
Yeah.
Even with her conversations with her parents when she's like, I'm going to be gone.
Yeah.
You're going to have to accept that.
Yeah. That's
something that people who have cancer in their 50s and 60s don't accept.
Yeah.
So for a 16-year-old, 17-year-old in the movie,
yeah,
acceptance shocking, for me at least.
Yeah.
I was like, I've seen it firsthand, and that moment of knowing or vocalizing the real reality of the situation
Yeah.
hurts.
Yeah.
And she did hurt her parents in that scene in both versions.
Yeah.
She's like, I'm going to die. You have to accept it.
Yeah.
Usually it is the parents' job to bring their kid back to reality as a kid.
Yeah.
Hey, you're not going to be, there's a certain point I'm sure most people have had, you're not going to be an astronaut.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you're probably not going to be president.
Yeah.
The odds are not in your favor.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And Hazel in the story was like, the odds are not in my favor.
Yeah.
It's the reality of it. But now Augustus, on the other hand, comes at it with, yeah, the odds aren't in our favor. So what? I want to make an impact. And one line, I think, in both was like, you want to be remembered, but I'm remembering you.
Yeah.
Am I not enough?
Yeah.
I think her love for him and his love for her within this book actually vocalizes the human experience of you are enough.
Yeah.
Even if you only, like, if we make a podcast and no one ever listens to it.
Yeah.
We're hanging out, dude.
Yeah.
We're making an impression, building our friendship. That's the ultimate crux of this experience.
Yeah.
Not the overreaching impression that we need to make a difference in the world, because odds are not in our favor.
Yeah.
So I think that whole dynamic, a lot of the scenes they have very underlying human tones to them.
Yeah.
Like, oh, surface level, this is a boy and a girl who love each other that are talking to each other. Then this is a conversation about death. This is a conversation about the human experience.
Right.
I may be looking too much into this book, but I think it's a very good vocalization of the human experience.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think it's a beautiful. It's like seeing a vivisection of a human life, or like rings in a tree that like you weren't supposed to see grow that quickly, and yet you do. And I think it's interesting that the other sort of tertiary group of people, but really important group, are the parents in their lives, who all have to accept these differently. There's the beautiful, the heartbreaking moment, but rendered really well, both in the book and in the film, of her at a younger, I believe at 13, when she's hearing her mother say aloud to her father, "I'm not going to be a mom anymore."
And me.
it is a horrible thing to have to experience, because I think it's accepting your parents are people.
Oh yeah.
It's accepting that your parents are human beings who also wanted things for their lives, and whose lives are now being changed also irrevocably. There's an undertone of unfairness in this movie that I think is hard maybe to accept at any age. As you get older, it's the unfairness in life that it's hard to quantify. And the way it's explored in the subplot in the book with Isaac and his ex-girlfriend, and in the movie, this is one of those situations where I think Green strikes an interesting tone in the book with this that maybe doesn't come across in the movie. And it's the spirit of unfairness that exists for young people and for teenagers, for children, who, like, they're sitting by where the old swing set was after it's been taken away, and he's explaining, like, oh, how, like, he's still obviously understandably hung up over the situation, but she doesn't quite let him feel full pity, and she basically comes to the conclusion of, like, well, she didn't really know what to do. Like, it's a hard thing to ask of a teenager.
Yeah.
To know what to do in that situation.
They were hating on Monica, Isaac's girlfriend, so much. And having been through the experience of being close to somebody in a situation like that, when they said that she couldn't handle it, I'm like, girls mature for knowing that she can't handle it. Versus, like, she put herself first. Yeah. And a lot of times, Peter Van Houten is another major character I'm going to bring into this. So, basically, there's a book within a book called The Imperial Affliction that Hazel and Gus bond over. It's basically a very philosophical novel written by a fictional author called Peter Van Houten. The story inside the book inside the book, is also about a cancer experience. And Hazel really bonds with it because it's a very alternative look at the cancer experience itself. Within that fictional book, that book just ends mid-sentence. And a large crux of Fault in Our Stars is trying to figure out what happens after the novel's done. And it goes back to, what am I leaving behind? And she wants to know the answers from the author so she can close her own chapter in her own book in a very clean way. But during the conversation and part of the story, they go to Amsterdam to visit this author with Augustus Waters' Make-A-Wish, which I think is very sweet. Yeah. It's a very touching moment where he shares his wish with her, but they meet the author and he's a huge fucking disappointment, right? Peter Van Houten is a fucking asshole. Yeah. He's an alcoholic. Yeah. You kind of learn that he's that way because the main character of the book he wrote was based on his own daughter's death and experience of cancer.
That was an interesting turn.
Which is a very interesting turn in both adaptations. I thought they did a really good job with that, because there is the parental experience that I'll talk to you about in a little bit with Hazel's parents versus this author. Yeah. Okay. But circling back, the relatability of Monica as a character. This is a very long-winded tangent, but she was mature enough to step away. Peter Van Houten brought up the fact that, or he says something along the lines of, we cater to you sick kids. Yeah. We give you your medicine. We give you your oxygen. We give you food and water, and you're going to be dead anyway. Why do we pity you? Yeah. Hazel, in turn, says, I know you pity us. Yeah. Pity is not uncommon for me. I'm aware of my situation. Yeah. And I think Monica's reaction to Isaac losing, she dumped him basically before his eye surgery, before he went completely blind, because she knew she couldn't handle it. Peter Van Houten, I think Isaac's reaction is the typical cancer kid reaction. Yeah. Why did she break up with me? Why didn't she love me? Yeah. Why didn't she pity me? Yeah. Is what I read into that. So I think Isaac as a character fits more of the mold of what we view kids with cancer as. And Hazel and Augustus are kind of breaking the mold a little bit. Sure. So they're trying to get Peter to tell them the end of the story, not for because they want to be pitied, but because they want to leave a good impression behind. That was very hard. Like, I had to read the book and watch the movie again to get that impression, though. It was more of like, I've seen this movie like 10 times. Yeah. It was like the 10th watch where I'm like, oh, fuck, he's talking about Isaac. Yeah. When he's talking about like wanting a certain treatment. Yeah. You know? Yeah. But then they also mentioned cancer perks. Yeah. Which are not unreal. So, like, it's like if you see an elderly or pregnant person on a bus, you give them a seat. Yeah. The pregnancy elderly perk, you know? You get a better seat on the bus. Yeah.
Because it matters to comfort these people.
It matters.
It matters to comfort people.
It matters to be a good person. Now, Peter Van Houten could give a fuck. Yeah. But even Augustus Waters got his driver's license when he shouldn't have got his driver's license. Yeah. As a kid.
Although, frankly, that's a lot of Americans now.
Oh, yeah.
It's a crazy... The number of people I see running red lights... This is a tangent. Yeah. The number of people that I see running red lights on a daily basis just on the way to work in the morning. Unreal. Because I'm a pedestrian full time. Yeah. And this is like... I'm launching a separate podcast about this.
Called Red Light.
And
it's going to be in search of you finding all the people who run red lights.
So that's going to be crazy. But yeah, so they have these, they're opportunities to comfort them. And it's understandable given the situation. Like it's God, it's just hard to fathom. And I also think though that they find meaning in the opportunities that people who want to comfort them give them. Mm-hmm. The whole trip itself is an opportunity to do something earnest in the world, with slightly different motivations. For her, it's an act of discovery, and for him, it's still some discovery. But I think it also fulfills his sense of adventure. Mm-hmm. I think it gives him a sense to explore. It's his first time in an airplane, and he doesn't know how he's going to react to it. And it's a very funny passage, and he's immediately excited, of course, once they're in the air, which is a very charming moment. And I think that, you know, with Peter, he's bitter enough not to understand the need for comfort for other people. It's strongly implied that he is a functional alcoholic to some degree.
Not even functional.
Barely
this
functioning.
Dude is like
a recluse
in the book. He's overweight, like having health issues.
So actually, that's the thing I wanted to bring up, which is that in the book, and this goes to casting, I had such a clear image in my head of like Albert Finney in like the 70s.
Oh yeah.
And with like a little scruff, and they shave his head. There's a movie that he made with John Huston, something about the volcano. But he's an older, aging ex-diplomat living in Mexico, and he's just a total alcoholic and a mess. But I pictured Albert Finney in that role because I think he would have been amazing for it. But that's not possible. And they zagged.
Do you know who I pictured for that role?
Who?
Paul Giamatti.
Paul Giamatti would also have been a very good decision. Like in The Holdovers which I recently saw, which is a terrific movie.
So happy you won a lot of awards at BAFTA. But
it's
continue.
Great. It was because I purposefully ignored the casting going into the film. I knew the leads, but beyond that, I didn't want to know the additional casting. I wanted to be surprised. And so when they got to Willem Dafoe as Peter Van Houten, was it my initial vision? No. But he is so good. Willem Dafoe in general is such a good actor that I stopped caring within about 5 seconds. I just got over it. And I developed this. He sold me this completely different vision of the character.
He plays a philosophical asshole. Yeah. Philosophical asshole so well.
Yeah.
He's just like trying to explain his random metaphors.
Yeah.
To Gus, initially, who loves his own metaphors with the cigarette in his mouth.
Yeah.
Saying he's not going to light the cigarette. He's just not going to give it power over himself.
Yeah.
Thing that could kill you in my mouth. I'm not letting it kill me.
Yeah.
That's a whole different detail. But the fact that he's like, and the tortoise, do you not understand? Like, he thinks he's so above them.
Yeah.
Because he's an adult.
Yeah.
And I think that's a situation a lot of the time.
He's patronizing.
Yeah. Adults patronize kids.
Yeah.
Even though they have experienced something way more terrorizing, way more growth bringing than any adult would probably ever experience.
Yeah.
Same with the doctors in the story.
Yeah.
Even doctors in real life. They condescend to kids.
Yeah.
And that's our society. We don't take kids seriously.
Yeah.
A lot of the times, we don't take sick kids seriously when they said they're having pain.
Yeah.
We don't catch things. That's the medical industry in America and a whole different podcast. Our third podcast. I think red light and the medical industry.
Yeah. So look for our brand. It's growing.
Yeah, it's the whole thing. But it speaks a lot about how he has an impression of kids in general. He has an impression of sick kids in general. But he doesn't actually ask them anything.
Yeah.
He tells them.
Yeah.
Which is very common. I feel bad for kids these days.
Yeah.
I feel bad. Like, even like with my sister, there was a moment where we're like, nah, we're in a lot of pain.
Yeah.
And they're just like, well, you got kicked in soccer. Like, it's nothing.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Like, this is different.
Yeah.
And we don't take the red flags.
Well, I've had those experiences too. Years ago, when I was very young, I played Pee Wee football, and I didn't even make it to the first full season because during a scrimmage game, I got tackled and my shoulder got split almost in half, and my humerus was broken.
Oh my God.
And I was still made to carry the bag of helmets back to the facility because we were across the football field and back to the locker rooms. And I was sobbing all the way across the field. And after the fact, we went back and told them, like, he might have to have surgery on his shoulder after this injury. And it was, we have a problem, like some adults have a problem correctly understanding a person's pain, how to validate an emotional response and still help them be stronger for the experience. And it's a hard thing to do. And if you're the wrong adult for that situation, it's a real bummer.
Oh, yeah.
I, for the record, could read a whole novel about Peter Van Houten because I think he is a fascinating character. I think that because you also have the dual concept of failure. It's a thing that you experience when you're that kind of adult. You grow into that kind of man, and you have creative impulses, but maybe you only get lucky with one book, and and you question your motives for doing it in the first place, and that whittles into your head. As somebody who's a working actor, I it's an instinct that I have to shout down a lot. It's this sense of panic that you get when you, and if you're not careful, it turns into something bad. It turns into something mean.
Mm-hmm.
And people just need to learn to control that.
Well, it goes back to the legacy. He is ashamed of his own legacy.
Yeah.
And the parental figure he was for his own kid.
Yeah.
When she was sick, I think he described her as being quite young.
Yeah.
When she passed away.
She's 6, I believe.
6. Yeah, his daughter Anna, who he bases his Imperial Affliction book on. But the dynamic of Gus and Hazel taking in and interpreting their situations in 2 very different ways. Hazel's parents and Peter Van Houten.
Yeah.
The juxtaposition of those 2 experiences. He becomes a raging alcoholic narcissist.
Yeah.
Fucking prick.
Yeah.
Her mom wants to be a social worker.
Yeah.
To help people through the situation.
A really beautiful storyline.
Yeah, I'm like, my mom was also a huge, my mom was my sister's medical advocate.
Yeah.
She stood by her side. She was, my sister was my mom's Klingon. She literally was called Klingon to my mom. And after she passed, she still was on forums trying to like help other parents going through that situation, which I think is one of maybe the hardest things you could possibly do.
Yeah.
Peter Van Houten took the easy way out. He took a shortcut.
Yeah.
He didn't take, I'm not going to say the right path. He didn't take the productive path.
Yeah.
The one that's actually going to make a good legacy for himself.
Yeah.
Hazel's mom is going to help other families go through their grief. She's leaving a good legacy.
Yeah.
Versus Peter Van Houten, not so much.
Well, he lives off the largesse of his family. And I think that you see that a lot in people who aren't challenged by the world. They can be far less engaged in helping it. And then I see people from all walks of life growing up in like, Cleveland and Phoenix, and seeing people come from different backgrounds and reflect on their struggles and their community struggles and do wonderful things for people, become really wonderful versions of themselves. Because if you face adversity the right way, it brings out something very special. And for him, he just didn't. He was a trust fund child who coasted off of one book, from what we can tell, and didn't really have another one in him. And just didn't. He was malformed by the world.
Yeah. And that speaks a lot about the real world experience of the people who are born with the resources to help others typically don't.
Yeah.
It is those who struggle to get the resources to help others that do.
Yeah.
And that's extraordinarily frustrating.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, you have such potential to be a good person.
Yeah.
That trust fund, you could be funding Make-A-Wishes for all these other kids.
Yeah.
You could be a genie. And you're not doing it.
Bruce Wayne is better than Batman.
Yeah.
Bruce Wayne is better, on balance, for Gotham than Batman.
For his philanthropy.
Because he's a philanthropist.
Yeah.
It's true.
And it's 100% true.
Trust funds, Peter
Trust
Van
fund, Peter
Houten.
Van Houten.
Parents dealing with adversity.
I think we should close the chapter on Peter Van Houten.
Yeah.
And kind of talk about one of my most heartbreaking scenes in the whole book. I want to know what broke your heart the most, because this is a tearjerker, folks. If you're not ready to cry, don't watch or read it. Ever since this came out in 2014 on the anniversary of my sister's passing, I watched this movie.
Yeah.
This is my good cry movie. So I've seen it plenty of times.
Yeah.
But when she's reading his eulogy to him, he wanted to attend his own funeral.
Yeah.
Oh, that got me.
Yeah.
That spoke volumes to the fact that she spoke to him directly when he was alive, saying goodbye. And then at his funeral, she spoke to his parents. And the phrase, funerals are for the living.
Yeah.
They 100% are.
Yeah. Yeah.
She said all the words that his parents needed to hear.
Yeah.
Because they're the ones that are also grieving.
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought it was a very good, that part specifically was a good reflection of that mindset of acceptance of people who are in the sick situation, to know that they are leaving that person behind, and how am I going to comfort them?
It's a wisdom, and
it's wise.
That's part of the tragedy of Hazel, is you see what she was a remarkable person, But what a remarkable life she might have had if it had not been cut short. How much more she would have been able to do for the world because of a real wisdom and a real unique ability to perceive people from a positive way. Because there are people who can read people, and for the most nefarious, selfish reasons, there are entire industries based on it. But this is someone who I could have seen becoming a, a, a senator that people talk about as restoring something to government, or someone who starts a business and decides that they want to pay their workers fairly and make sure their families are cared for. And like you see what could have happened to her had she gone on, and it does shred you to know that she doesn't have much longer.
What I asked this question about a lot of people I've met who are not with us anymore. What do you think she would have done if she was not sick? Or rephrase that, what she would have done if the philosopher, the cancer treatment she was on, actually cured it?
Sure.
So she had the cancer experience and lived on to tell the tale.
Yeah.
What do you think Hazel would have done with her life? And what do you think if Gus in the same situation would have done with his life?
That's a good question.
I feel like they would have got married 100%.
Yeah.
Loved each other.
Yeah.
But in terms of careers and life impact, if they would have survived to tell the tale,
yeah.
What do you think they would have done?
So this is interesting because one of my favorite podcasts right now is called Scott Hasn't Seen. Scott Ackerman, one of my favorite comedians and one of the godfathers of podcasting. Basically, he watches a movie that is a weird cultural blind spot for him. And he recently watched the sequel to Before Sunrise, Before Sunset, part of Richard Linklater's Before series, the trilogy of films with Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy. And the entire movie thrives on picking up with these characters a decade later and finding out what's happened to them after this really romantic premise and this version of their life that feels so special and far away. So what would have happened to them as a couple? I don't know. Because I think I know that it would have shaped that relationship into something that would have meant something to them for the rest of time. That would always be an incredibly vital relationship for them, whatever the outcome. As individuals, I think it's fascinating to consider where they would have gone. As I said, I think Hazel is such an empathetic person that I don't know what she wouldn't have done for the world in terms of her ability to organize people and build. And I think for Augustus, he's such an extrovert. He's such an adventuresome personality. I think whatever he did, it would have been something that sort of probably cast him further afield and probably had him hungry to understand the world. And I think he would have been an explorer of some kind, and not necessarily in an exploitative way, in the way that can be, because he had this special time with Hazel that, regardless of whether or not they're together, I think will have shaped him for the better and sort of formed that intensity into something really special.
Yeah, I agree. I think they would have gone on two similar but different paths.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, honestly, they probably would have both been authors.
I could see that.
For their love of philosophy, but writing two very different books, and showing two very different perspectives. I can picture them going in two different rooms, click, clack, clacking on their writing things.
Yeah.
Writing two different American novels.
Yeah.
And then coming together to have dinner.
Yeah.
And not talk at all about what they were writing.
Yeah.
I feel like they would have been those kind of people who have their own opinions, share a similar outlook on life eventually at the dinner table, but view and portray in their careers very different people. If you looked at them separately on the street, you're like, those people aren't dating.
Yeah, right.
Those people aren't together. And then you talk to them together and you're like, oh no, they can't be with anyone else.
I think it's a healthy relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is, and I think it would always have been a healthy relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that they know who they are, and they're able to help each other without warping each other, which can happen in unhealthy relationships over time. Yeah. It's fascinating, I think, to think about what would have happened, because it's such an important portion of the book is getting a sequel to Peter Van Houten's masterpiece, and And that was another beautiful moment, not to go too far back into Peter Van Houten, but the idea of like, they're fictions. They don't exist to me. Once the book was done, it's done. I needed them for the story. But because they see that experience from a different vantage point, the future is very much important to them. Because they want to be able to see that future that they might not, probably will not be able to get to see.
Oh, yeah. The what if.
Yeah.
That's a big part of this one, I think. What if I were to be around? What is going to happen when I leave? And I think a part of like Hazel's mom experience is like trying to understand why this is happening, and because understanding the why, how can I fix it? You don't want to have a kid that's sick or broken, you know?
Yeah.
And Hazel, even with thinking about the ending of her book, is like, why? Why did the book? I mean, actually, not really. More so the why for the end, because she understood. She even said out loud, "I understand that Anna probably died or was too sick to continue on to make the book." Right. Yeah. But what happened to the hamster? You know,
What happens to her mom? What happens to the Dutch tulip salesman? Is he a con man? Is he, as Peter Van Houten says, a metaphor for God? Is he like, what is he?
I didn't get that metaphor at all, Peter Van Houten.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess I'd have to read the book.
Oh my gosh.
I'll wait for the movie.
The fake bug. Yeah. This book hits so home. I feel like if I hadn't experienced my own thing in 2010, when this movie came out in 2014, I think, I still would really have enjoyed this adaptation. Yeah. Even if I didn't have this personal experience. Yeah. I'm not glad I had that experience. Of course. By any stretch of the imagination.
But it shaped your experience with this
But it shaped my experience to view this particular adaptation in a very, very different way.
Sure.
And I am grateful for that. Yeah. In terms of the quality of adaptation coming up in the last 10 minutes. Yeah. So, production-wise, quality of film side of things, which is what we bring to the table in this podcast, being from the film industry. I thought casting, pretty solid. Yeah. For mostly everybody. Isaac, I thought, was one of the best castings.
Nat Wolff, yeah.
Yeah, Nat Wolff was great. Yeah. Shailene Woodley, awesome. Augustus Waters. Yeah. Okay, mostly because I don't love him as an actor, but like.
Well, I also think Augustus he's, at least to her, he's very pretty and he's very pretty,
pure. Yeah.
He's very pretty and very pure.
Yeah. Yeah. So in terms of that, I guess it was pretty good. Mom casting for Hazel, spot on. Yeah. Thought she played mother to sick child very well. Yeah. Having seen that myself. Production, quality overall, art department, costumes, makeup, everything. I couldn't find fault. Yeah. And even the editing. I was like, the editing is a standard good movie. It's nothing art house. It's nothing super special. But it's well paced, well cut, well made. Yeah. It wasn't nominated for an Oscar. It's never going to be nominated for an Oscar. Yeah. But I think it does deserve recognition for the fact that out of 10 for me overall in production, 8.5. Yeah. 9. Like, I think it's filmed in Pittsburgh, actually.
It was, in fact, filmed in
Pittsburgh. Yeah, it was filmed in Pittsburgh. Yeah. But we're here.
And in fact, it was, I know Green signed off on that. Mm-hmm. And, like, after he saw footage, he was like, yeah, they did a great job with the surroundings and the setting.
Yeah. I thought the terms of screenwriting for it, characters they cut, fine to cut.
Yeah, Caitlin could go.
Caitlin can go. Augustus's ex-girlfriend who also had cancer. Yeah. An interesting sidebar story that we'll put in the blog.
It reads well in the novel.
It reads well in the novel, but I don't think it would have translated well in the movie. It would have taken up too much time. I thought the movie was the time length of the movie was great. Yeah. Like I said, I've seen it so many times, so it's hard to say like if I would ever get sick of the length of it, but it's a good pace. I liked actually one very specific change the screenwriter made. When Augustus tells her he loves her on the plane in the book. Yeah. In the movie, he tells her at the romantic dinner. Yeah. That was a great segue, a great compression of those two different scenes. Sure. Because it felt weird in the book for him to say that on a plane surrounded by a bunch of strangers in a compact area. Yeah. But at the romantic dinner with the sparkly lights and the beautiful food and the talk about existentialism, I thought it fit better in the dining scene than it did on the plane in the book. So Screenwriting choices in terms of where to put what, good.
Yeah.
Good. I would give that 9.5 out of 10.
Yeah.
Screenwriting. The lines, they didn't add anything new to the actual wording. Sometimes adaptations they take in the screenwriting, they take and they try and give a new line that they think would have been in the book.
Yeah.
They didn't need to do that.
Yeah.
They never need to do that, really. And they didn't do it here, which I very much appreciated. Performance, directing. I would give this overall, for me, out of 10 as an adaptation, 9 out of 10.
Sure.
Because, like Hazel, I reserve my 10
Yeah.
for something, which is
Yeah.
where I got that from.
Oh, yeah.
When the nurse, when she's really, really sick as a kid, she asks her what her pain level is out of 10. She holds up 9 fingers, and the nurse is like, I know that you're brave.
You're a fighter.
You're a fighter because you gave a 10 a 9.
Yeah.
She's like, no, I just know I'm saving my 10.
Yeah.
And I feel that in everything. If I rank my pain or I rank a screenplay a 9 out of 10, my pain's pretty bad.
Yeah.
The movie's pretty good. The adaptation's pretty solid,
Yeah.
but there is that 9 or that 9.5, 10 out there. So,
And again, an unbelievably wise self-defense for a child.
oh my
to
gosh,
be like, it could be worse.
it could be worse.
Prepare for worse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, Fault in Our Stars, originally by John Green, portrayed. I don't know who directed this. I didn't actually look too much.
Josh Boone, I believe.
Josh Boone.
Yeah.
Great job. 9 out of 10 for me.
Yeah.
What do you think?
So, as I said earlier, this is what's so fascinating about adaptations for me, because they should inform and build on the book in some way. If they're going to happen, they can't just be word for word, shot for shot, page for page, what ends up on screen. You got to find a way through to it. And I think this movie does that in a lot of the moments with execution. And I have a very specific moment in mind. And it actually goes back to your question from earlier. What's the part that really kind of broke your heart a little bit? And it is the moment where Hazel gets the email. They jump the gun and they send her an email about Amsterdam. And they say, we would love, or Peter Van Houten says, I would love to have you if you could ever come. And she freaks out. She tells her mom, it's like, oh, can we? And then there is the moment of heartbreak on Laura Dern's face as her mom, where she begins to go through this thing where she was trying to have a moment to herself. She panicked and thought her child was sick. She heard this amazing thing that she had wanted from her favorite author for so long and probably felt elated for her, and then has to analyze the actual request and say, I cannot afford to do that for you. Like, in that moment, they both have, Shalane and Laura both have that moment where they both have to internalize very quickly, it's not going to happen.
The situation.
It cannot happen. Mm-hmm. And Laura Dern is such an amazing actress that you watch her heart sink. You watch that moment as she walks away, the double takes. She does like a couple in a sequence to almost as if like turning around to face her again, she could say something or find something to say, a new way to say I'm sorry that somehow makes her feel better. And she just can't find it. And it is such a quiet, simple moment, but it is so much of the idea of unfairness in the story. And that's why it's a good adaptation. It's something I like to walk over here. I like to walk a lot because I like to process my thoughts, because I hadn't fully rendered a verdict on the movie. Okay. I had needed some time to process it fully and correctly. But I think as an adaptation, they mostly did a bang-up job. I think getting the thematic, emotional spine of the movie, I think they make changes that are kind of fascinating. I think Willem Dafoe is fascinating in that role because he's very different than what I imagined and than what was written. But he still finds an energy to it that is all kinds of things. It's mean and cruel and sad and beaten, and he even has that moment to come back later in the film where he tries to find some drug of humanity in him and say, like, I didn't know how to tell you. I'm still trying to. She calls him a failure in the car, and the way he accepts it, you just get the impression of like, yep, I know. Yeah. I don't know what else to tell you except to be direct and give you this information. I can't be more emotional than that. Maybe the one bit that I go back and forth on it. It wouldn't have hurt in the movie to have that moment that I liked in the book where she has to tell Isaac she didn't know how to handle it. that moment, because I think it would have rounded out that theme just a little bit more to have that final arc for Isaac that's mirrored theirs, to have that final beat of she didn't know. Like it's so hard. This isn't your fault. You're right to feel this way, but also I can't not be honest. It's like she didn't know how to handle it.
Yeah,
she couldn't handle it.
Brings back to like Monaco is actually a very mature person in this situation,
trying to protect herself,
as a 16-year-old girl.
She didn't know what else to do.
Yeah, so they definitely could have brought that out in a couple more.
It wouldn't have
lines. Hurt. Yeah,
but it's not a killer for me, in the sense that I do think you still have. I think Nat Wolff brings a lot of that out in his performance by the end. He does, I think, evolve a sense of maturity by the end of that film. Yeah, I think I'd give it a 9. Mm-hmm. I think it does no harm. It does some really interesting things with casting that really shifts some fun beats there. And I'm a sucker for a travel movie. I love a travel movie. Amsterdam.
I
don't fly enough to hate it, so airplanes still excite me. I flew to Arizona a month ago to visit my wife, who was working out there at the time, and I could tell that people were so tired of it. I felt like I was at Disneyland. It's so pathetic. I haven't flown in like 10 years, so it was so exciting.
Oh, jeez.
But yeah, I give it a 9 out of 10.
Nice. Question I posed in the last 2 episodes. Do you think in the future this will be remade? Does it deserve a remake? And would it be a TV show or miniseries or another version of the movie?
It's an interesting one here.
Hmm.
I think it'll be a long time. I think this did an extremely capable job of adapting an emotionally complex story. I think that's hard to do again. So I think if it gets adapted, I think it'll be a long time from now. I do think that books as an IP are so attractive to studios that I would not be shocked. And I think John Green is still so relevant, as is his brother Hank Green, who was a scientist and social media expert, and who has himself been very public with his own battle with cancer.
I bought his socks.
Yeah.
His cancer socks for my parents for Christmas.
Like they're good guys.
Good folks.
They're relevant, and they're still writing, and they're still working, and John is still writing. And so I think to a studio 20 years from now, maybe 30 years from now, oh yeah, I think a good book with a solid reputation and a really nice relationship with its audience, yeah, I think that gets remade. But it's going to be a while.
Yeah, I agree. It's 30 years from now.
Yeah.
When we have different technologies adapted to a 3D world we step into, you know?
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a movie, though. I don't think it's long enough to be a TV show.
No.
It doesn't need to be a TV show.
It's a quick read.
Yeah. So
it's really well condensed. There's a lot. They did a good job. Yeah. I want to read his other, the Anthropocene. It's sort of if I understand it, a satiric sort of exploration of the human experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel bad that I'm blanking on it, but
I'm blanking too. But we will read it.
Yeah, yes, and we'll note it in a post.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Okay, so I think we gave our rankings 9 out of 10.
Yeah.
This comes to the conclusion, I think.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Yeah.
Of episode 3, Fault in Our Stars of Adaptation. You can follow us on the social media as Adaptation Pod, or at our website, which will have links to everything, including the blog, which will have more details on all the episodes at www.adaptationpod.com.
Yeah.
We'll stream on most platforms, and thanks, guys.
Thank you guys so much.
We'll see you next
time.
All right. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.